Welcome, welcome, welcome! Welcome back to Kushner Chess for Beginners Part 2. So, I will assume in today's class that you know the pieces already, you know the value, you know how they move, and let's try to continue with this crash course so that you learn to play chess, and then once you get to high school, you are coming straight into the chess team, Kushner Chess team. So today I will start with the endgame first. So in chess, very often what happens is not that you win in the beginning. And chess has three stages. Opening game, and you remember what you have to do. You have to bring out the pawns in the center, the knights, the bishops, and then you castle. A very, very important thing. If the king doesn't castle, it's a sitting duck, and the opponent's gonna right away attack the exposed king. So you have to castle. Now, in order to become a good chess player, you have to learn how to mate. And in the beginning, just with three types of situations. So let's take a look. What you can do in Shredder, which you should definitely get, you can set up a position. When you set up a position, you make the board completely empty, and we're going to place just a king and the rook, and we're going to have black to move. And so right here we now see a position that is a very simple end position. There is only a rook. And no, but let's start with the queen. That's what I wanted. That's going to be let's put, instead of the rook, we're going to put the queen like this. Okay, this one doesn't matter, white to move or black to move. And what we need to do in order to learn how to mate, we can put here we can put the strength a little bit higher. And now we want to push the king to the side. So I'm going to move for white first, but I will prefer black. So again, you see, these are all the possible moves, and let's give a king a check. You see, the king cannot move, cannot take the queen because the other king is protecting. And now we again pushing the king to the edge, because in order to mate with the queen, you have to push the king to the edge. And we're going now to play here. And now it's made in one move. So the easiest way is you mate right here. You see what happens? The white king cannot capture the black queen because the black king is protecting the black queen. But you could also mate right here. You see, because from here, the queen is attacking the king, but the king, very important, cannot go next to the other king ever. And therefore, this is simply mate. So let's take a look one more time what happens here. And I'm going to be here entering moves myself. Where do we have this? Okay. Can I enter the moves like that? Okay. I thought I could. All right, so right? Like this. Oh, that's going on, right? So for example, again, check. The king has to go down. I bring the king closer, and here, and check. And let's see here. And the king goes here. And the king tries to escape. And now mate, right here. Yeah. So this is really the easiest type of a mate. So what you want to do to practice this is simply open up Shredder, set up the position, empty the board, put one king on each side and a queen. And then you can raise a little bit the Shredder, the level of Shredder, and then you try to mate the king. Now, there is one move that we did not speak about, one position better, that we didn't speak about. And it's called a stalemate. So let's take a look what is a stalemate. The stalemate is type of a draw, or in English, you might know better the word a tie. But you see, if I have a queen and I make a stalemate, I won't be happy, because I really should win the game. And if it's a stalemate, it's kind of like half point each. So it's a tie. No one wins. So let's take a look when a stalemate happens. Stalemate happens if let's say the queen gives a check here, the king has one more space, and now instead of black moving right here and mate, he moves by mistake the king here. But look what happens now. When the king lands there, the white king is not attacked, but cannot move anywhere. And that is a stalemate. You see, stalemate draw, which means no one wins. And so if I would be black here, I'd be pretty upset. So this is one thing that you always have to a little bit be careful when you are having the queen. Because let's say something like this, and look at this stalemate now. If the king goes here, it's a stalemate, because take a good look. The white king cannot go anywhere where it wouldn't be attacked. But right now it's not attacked not by a queen. And therefore this is again a type of a stalemate. Or even if the king would go here, would also be a stalemate. So you definitely don't want, you always have to make sure that when you're trying to mate with the queen, that you don't commit a stalemate. What is the easiest not to do the stalemate is if you have, for example, a position like this, move the queen to the side, and right now you are cutting off the white king. So the white king can go anywhere here, right? You see, it can go back and forth here. And if it goes here, it's mate in one move. There are, in fact, two types of mates here. Here, it's a mate. Or, what's going to be easier for you to see, it's right here. Right? It's also checkmate. So in order, I don't want to spend more time here, but in order to become a good chess player, you have to be very comfortable to mate with the queen, and only the queen with the king on the board. But it's nothing very difficult. Let's take a look now at a different position. Again, we're going to set up a position. We're going to empty the board. And now we're going to have two rooks and the king, the opponent king. Okay, this is now the position. And let's take a look now that here what you have is two rooks. You remember the rook attacks sideways. So right now, let's take a look. When the rook goes here, it's giving check. And now we're going to do this Caesar's pattern, right? We're going to give another check and another check, and the king is all the time going down. And another, and checkmate. Right? This is a very easy type of a pattern to mate with two rooks. There is nothing very hard. So even if we, for example, set up the position a little bit in a different way, let's say something like this, again, what you want to do is you want to move the rooks in this type of a pattern. Now, see that you do not need a king in order to mate with two rooks, right? You cut with one rook, right? Now this rook is cutting the king, and let's say the king goes here, and now the other rook, check, attacking the king, and the king go here, and the other rook, check. But now watch, the king is now, you cannot give check here, because if you give check, the king is going to take the other rook, which is not protected. So this rook has to go here. And if the king goes here, again, you check here. The king has to go down, but again, be careful. You can give check now. You have to protect the rook. And you protect it like this. Let's say the king goes down. You use this other rook, and the pattern again is the same, and mate right here. The checkmate with two rooks is very, very easy. Very easy. Let me show you one that is also absolutely essential that you learn with one rook. So with one rook, there are two patterns that you have to recognize. So we're going to take one rook off, and we going to have the pattern like this. Now, for the mate with one rook, the two kings have to be facing exactly each other, and in chess we call this position opposition, the opposition. And you can mate in this position if it's black's move, then he would step out from the opposition, and once it's out of the opposition, so you cannot mate. But since in this game it's white's move, and let's take a look here, and the two kings are in opposition, so you see this is simply a mate. So what is worthwhile to remember is that the two kings have to be in opposition, which means there is one square in between them, but they are facing each other exactly. Now, the only exception is if the king would be in the corner. So if the king is in the corner, then white does not need an opposition. The white can simply give check here, and it is checkmate. But in order to learn how to get the king down, you need to recognize two patterns. Let's set up one pattern and then the second one. This is the first pattern to recognize. Take a look that it's white's move. And where do you want the black king to go? Well, let's maybe put the one thing here that maybe you should get familiar, that in chess, you see I put now the coordinates. So every square is simply a coordinate of a letter and a number. So the white king is standing on D, the letter goes first, D, 1, 2, 3 on d3. Nothing hard. And the rook stands on f4. And the black king stands on e1. And now where do you want king to go? Well, you want the black king really to step onto d1, and then it is the opposition, and then white can mate. And therefore, what white wants to do is called a waiting move. He can move really anywhere here, right? You see, can move here, because look, the king is always going to the same place, meaning the opposition. And this pattern now you recognize right away that mate is right here. And so if you have this type of pattern, you are simply doing the waiting move, and when the king moves over, you have mate. Now, this is the first pattern. The second pattern is from the side. So let's take a look now at something like this. And we're going to have white move again. So now the black king is cut from the rank, from the side. Right? The black king cannot go over. But the black king is not going to go onto e1. Because if the king goes into onto e1, it would be mate. But right now is white's move, and therefore if white goes here, you see what happens is that black by necessity steps out of the opposition, right? If this king steps into the opposition, the other king steps out of the opposition. So, but this rook is cutting the black king. And what you want to do is you simply make a waiting move here. And now what happens? If this black king goes back here to e1, you see the two kings are in the opposition, and therefore it's mate in 1, right here. Nothing hard. But therefore, this king is not going to go to e1, it's going to go to c1. But now the other king follows to d3. And this black king goes to b1. And the white king follows to c3. And the black king, white king, and now the black king is forced to go back. And now you have it in the opposition, and therefore you know that there is mate here. So this mating with one rook is a little bit more challenging, but if you recognize these two patterns, and chess is all about recognizing patterns, it's very easy. So let me maybe play now from how to get the king if the king is in the center. Right? Take a look. This now, we're going to place it like this. And if you recognize this, this is really a type of a pattern that we've seen before. And therefore, I play just simply now a waiting move. And now the king stepped into the opposition. And I give him check. Now, the black king is attacking my rook, and therefore I have to bring my king to protect. And right now, this looks like the other pattern, right? The one where the king is chasing, but now look what happened. The king went down, and therefore I go with the rook, cut this king again. And now I go here, because if the black king will step on d2, then I would give him check and push him down. But now he's running away from me. Now again, he is on the edge of the board. Now I cut him off here. And now I go here. A waiting move. The king is running away from me. I'm following, and mate. Right? Nothing very hard. So these two patterns are necessary to learn to mate with one rook. And this is important that in the beginning, when you try to learn this mates with a queen, with two rooks and one rook, and also you'll start to understand how the pieces move. Remember, by the queen, the important thing is that you should avoid stalemate. Now, with two rooks or one rook, you also can create a stalemate, but it's rare, and so let's leave it for now. Let's now go back to the beginning of the game. I'm going to play a game to try to introduce no, let's see one more thing in the end game. I'm sorry, my friend, but let's see one more thing in the end game, and this class is only going to be about end game. I'm not going to show you the middle game because that's gonna be too confusing. So let's do one more thing in the end game. Let's do this. Let's take a look. So let's empty the board and let's learn this rule. This is an interesting rule. You remember no, let's set up the position slightly differently. I'm gonna push this here. We're gonna put it like this. This is what we want. Okay. So look what happens if white is to move. This is when I'm going to put white to move. You remember that once the pawn comes to the end, it will promote. So let's take a look. The king simply cannot catch the pawn. And now it's going to promote into the queen. Right? And now, obviously, you know how to mate with the queen. Right? You simply cut the king off. You bring the other king. Again, you're making this box smaller. Now the black king only has two squares, and mate. And you see, that's why it's very important to be able to mate with the queen, to know this. But let's take a look now if the position is slightly different. It is now black to move. And this is a strange geometry in chess, because take a look how many squares you have from white pawn to the, including the square that the pawn is standing right now, and coming down to A8, where the pawn will promote. So we have A4, one square, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from A4 to A8, you have 5 squares. And now imagine that there is a box. I'm showing this with my mouse, but hopefully you can see it. So look at this. So now I'm going to do a box from A4, B4, C4, D4, and E4. 5 squares, the same amount of squares that the pawn has down to promote. So take a look, right? There is this box of 25 squares. And the rule is like this. If the black king will step into this box, the black king will catch the pawn. Let's take a look. All right, let's take a look. Look how he's catching up. And now the king can take the queen, and it's a draw. Draw because the two kings cannot win against each other. So you see, if, and the same thing would be if, for example, this king, black king, would have been, let's say, here, right? If the king steps into the box, he will catch the pawn. Here, and again, and a draw, a tie. So now I'm going to set up a position, and I'm going to ask you a little question. Let's see. So we have like this, and we have the, let's put the like this, like let's put it like this. Okay, so white to move. So will the black king catch the white pawn? So let's take a look. How many squares are from A2 to A8? There are 7. And the black king stands right on G2, which is 7 squares from A2. And it's white move. So you would think that black will catch the pawn. Well, if it's white's move, I kind of like trick you a little bit. Why? Because white, from a beginning position, can jump 2 squares. And now you see that the black king is not within the square. It's outside the square. Right? Here is the square 4 by 4, but the king is standing on 5 by 5 square. So that will not catch him. But if, for example, the black king would have been right here, oops, like here, right? Even if white moves, no, that was incorrect move, right? Now the black king will catch the white pawn and will promote and will take, right? So this is a rule of a square, which is an important rule to remember for the end game. End game is really a fascinating topic, and there are many positions in the end game, but it's really worthwhile studying the end game because good players simply know how to win the end game. There is one little position that I want to show you for the end today. It comes up very often. So the question is like this. We have one pawn, but the black king is in front of the white pawn. So here, really, it depends if black knows how to play, it's going to be a draw, and if he doesn't, then he's going to lose. So let's first imagine that he doesn't know how to play correctly. White to move. And now we're going to force the computer to play incorrectly. So here, and now look what happens. The king goes here, and the white king steps into what? You remember that word? Opposition. Now the black king steps here, white pushes the pawn, black is forced to move out, white king comes here, and white promotes to a queen. But if black knows how to play this pattern correctly, then really it's a draw. Let's take a look. I'm going to play now against the computer, and we're going to imagine that the computer knows how to play this position. I step here into a position, but that doesn't matter. This is the key move. The black has to step not here. If he steps here, he's going to lose. Here, he has to step out. So that loses. So where black has to step here is really back. And when white steps here, let's take a look what happens now. Black steps into the opposition. White gives him check. Black steps in here. White has to step here. And it's a draw because it's a stalemate. So you see, this is a worthwhile pattern to learn because if you know how to play this correctly as black, so you're going to draw, and if you don't, you're going to lose. So let's stop here for today. Today was all about endgames, and so the last thing that we are left with is the middle game, which is really the hardest in chess. But today, if you have Shredder, and you should have Shredder, so set up a position, put the queen against the king, put two rooks against the king, put one rook against the king, and you should really practice till you are very comfortable to mate those mates. Those are the most basic and important mates. And we saw two rules about endgame. One is the rule of the box. So if the opponent king steps into the box, he will catch the running down to promote pawn. And if he doesn't step into the box, then he's not going to catch the pawn. And this last one is when the opponent king is in front of the pawn. And if he knows how to play correctly, means he's going to draw. He always has to step backwards straight so that he steps then into the opposition, right? And then that means that he is going to be able to draw. And the most important thing, my friends, is to enjoy and play this beautiful, amazing game as chess is. Be well till the next class.